93-year-old Alice Bacon spent her final days behind a fence, waving to her family from afar. This morning, she died from COVID-19 in Newmarch House, becoming Australia's 100th victim of the virus. Tonight, her daughters share their grief and anger and fresh claims the facility stole their mother's chance to survive. Masks and wipes, the Qantas plan to give you wings, but when will the borders open? Day one and the rules are out the window already. Our COVID-safe public transport network, anything but. Breaking news on Australia's first human trials for a COVID-19 vaccine. And the NRL's dispute with the referees gets ugly. Could it delay the season restart?
This is 9 News with Peter Overton.
Good evening. It's the source of one of Australia's worst COVID clusters, and tonight Newmarch House has seen the death of the nation's 100th victim. The family of great-grandmother Alice Bacon has been critical of the facility for weeks and believe mismanagement could have cost their mother's life.
See, that's her in her young days.
The photos and memories of a wonderful life, but for the daughters of 93-year-old Alice Bacon, her passing would be remembered as a dreadful tragedy.
Was stolen by this terrible virus, and the mismanagement, I believe, that happened initially at Newmarch.
Their grief was matched by anger. Last Friday, they claimed they were warned their mother, who was in palliative care, may not survive before a doctor recommended fluid.
They didn't have any IV fluids or tubing at Newmarch, so it waited till the next day, where we now wonder if that was that. Well, it was the doctor's words. We've lost that window of opportunity.
Alice Bacon died early this morning.
They should have been screaming loudly to anybody who'd listened that they needed help, that things were out of control at Newmarch.
With the nursing home in lockdown for the past month, they've watched their mother fight COVID from afar. But yesterday, Mary Watson was allowed in for the final visit.
We told her we loved her. I FaceTimed my brother, so he got to say goodbye.
It's the saddest of milestones. On March 1, Perth man James Kwan, who'd been a passenger on the Diamond Princess, was the first Australian to die of the virus. 79 days later, Alice Bacon has become our 100th victim. Anglicare this evening released a statement passing on their condolences to the family of Alice Bacon. As to her treatment, under the law, they claim they cannot discuss any individual case, but insist every resident here receive the best possible care. 11 days ago, the federal government appointed an independent advisor to take over the running of the nursing home after threatening to strip Anglicare of its licence.
They just hoped for the best, and the worst happened.
Damien Ryan, 9 News.
Breaking news now on the COVID Safe app that the Prime Minister says is crucial to lifting restrictions. Our state politics reporter Liz Daniels is on Macquarie Street this evening. Liz, the app is not working.
No, Pete, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. More than 6 million Australians have downloaded the COVID Safe app since it was launched more than a month ago, thinking it would help to save lives. But we can reveal New South Wales Health is having technical issues that mean they cannot use the data from the app to help trace the contacts of an infected person, which is the primary purpose. They're hoping to have the issues ironed out in the next week or so, but they've only got until Monday before 1.2 million children go back to school and thousands flood the public transport network.
OK, Liz, thank you. Holes are already appearing in the government's COVID-safe public transport plan on the first day of operation. Bus drivers have been told not to enforce the new passenger limits, and tonight too many people were getting on board some services.
The government's COVID-safe public transport limit in practice, a stream of passengers board the queue should stop here with the 24th customer. But they keep on coming. Fair few people just got on this bus.
Oh yeah, well I'll get on another one.
The driver says nothing because government guidelines sent to them say physical distancing may not always be practical and that they should advise customers when you have reached capacity, but do not refuse them travel. Do not police the new physical distancing guidelines.
Extra people will get on a bus and somebody will come up to the driver and say, you need to police this. or somebody will come on and have a crack at the driver because of another passenger, or fights between passengers or altercations.
The Transport Minister wants commuters to self-regulate.
We can't sit there and police every bus stop. I mean, if you see a crowded bus, I wouldn't get on it. I don't want the risk of COVID.
As the evening peak rolled on, Transport staff were out monitoring numbers. The best way to avoid crowds is to use a travel app like TripView or Opal Travel. They show how many people are on board the bus or train as it arrives. Train patronage was up 6% yesterday from a week ago, though the number of passengers on buses was down 4%. The Premier telling us to drive instead. A crash on the M5 this morning gridlocked the motorway, a throwback to pre-lockdown times. While many buses are already exceeding limits, there'll be even more movement come Monday when schools go back and drivers are told not to leave students sitting at bus stops. The expectation, it also allows parents to go back to work, but not all businesses will be rushing staff back to the office because limits in elevators and things like hot desking make it difficult to maintain a safe distance.
I think there will be definitely an uplift in terms of people heading into the office, but I also think people are doing it in a slow and responsible way.
Liz Daniels, 9 News.
With the pressure building on all states to open their borders, Qantas has revealed how it will fly into a COVID-19 future. But its plan contradicts the advice of our Chief Medical Officer.
The Qantas fleet in mothballs, deserted terminals, domestic travel on its knees. But the Qantas boss thinks it's all about to change, with borders opening sooner than most of us thought.
There is a possibility that we might have nearly all the states opening up as early as July, and we're planning for that.
Early July, and he's talking about Queensland as well.
We are reviewing that at the end of each month. I made that abundantly clear.
Qantas is predicting that Gold Coast or Noosa winter holiday could be back on the cards.
There's no doubt that the July school holidays are absolutely critical to these businesses, and we need to get some great long weekends before then.
And when the borders do open, Qantas will offer a face mask. They will be recommended, not mandatory. Before the drink and hot towel, there'll be your personal protection pack. Rex Airlines says face masks will be compulsory, and you'll have to buy your own. It all contradicts the advice of the Chief Medical Officer, who says we don't need to wear face masks. The next time you board a Qantas or Jetstar flight, don't expect too many changes in this COVID-19 world. There will be no social distancing on board, no empty middle seat. The airline says it's accepting the world's best medical advice, which says the risk of in-flight transmission is negligible. Qantas says if it had to social distance, a 180-seat plane would be flying 22 passengers, and fares would be 8 to 9 times more expensive. Before all state borders open, the New South Wales government in coming days will announce regional holidays will be permitted. That's a godsend for popular destinations like the Western Plains Zoo.
Looking at the Dubbo regional economy, tourism injects over $300 million a year into the local economy here.
So Qantas has a plan, it has the planes, all it needs is permission to fly. And regional New South Wales is primed. All it needs is a Premier to give the green light. Mark Burrows, 9 News.
No bubblers or inter-school sport. These are just some of the new rules to safely get our schools back up and running full time. As 9 News exclusively revealed, all 1.2 million students in New South Wales will return to the classroom as normal on Monday. And if they don't attend, they will be marked as truants.
For 3 months, Erin McClelland has been doubling as a teacher.
Dinosaurs don't lay eggs.
Her and her husband run Clearview, a screen door business in Cronulla, and have found it next to impossible to earn a living and homeschool.
It's a punish trying to get them to do it. So when he says, oh, OK, can I have a break now? Then that's when I work.
On Monday, Kai will be back at Year 2 at Woolooware Public, and it can't come soon enough.
It's time. It's time.
I'm looking forward to Monday bringing normality back to families.
There will be no more online learning and skipping class won't be tolerated.
We expect students to attend. It is a normal school week from next week and they need to be attending. Roles will be marked as per normal and unexplained absences will be followed up.
Schools like Cherrybrook Public will look different.
We're not going to have things like the full school assemblies, we won't be having excursions and we won't be welcoming non-essential visitors onto school sites either.
Kids won't be able to use bubblers, go on work experience, play sport, debate or do any activities with other schools, and drop-off and pick-up will be overhauled too. The concern is teachers have just 3 days to figure it all out.
Colleagues are extremely angry about the lack of consultation.
As members of the general public are concerned, well, so are teachers about their own well-being.
Most of the state's almost 600 Catholic schools are already back full-time, likewise the independents, but they are expecting all students to be back in class at the very latest by the end of May.
But closures like at Warragamba Public earlier this month will come.
It will be common for schools to be shut down temporarily.
Doctors confident, though, identifying a COVID case, closing and cleaning the classrooms can be done swiftly and safely. Chris O'Keefe, 9 News.
We have breaking news in the hunt for a coronavirus vaccine tonight. Let's go live to 9's Charles Croucher. Charles, the world is a step closer, but tonight there's an Australian link.
Yeah, evening, Pete. The first human trials of a vaccine here in Australia will be announced next week. Previously, all studies in Australia have focused on finding a cure to COVID-19. This will focus on prevention and be the first of its kind in the Southern Hemisphere. All this comes on a day when a major breakthrough was announced in the United States. It's slow, precise and painstaking, but this lab is now leading a global race.
These antibodies were proven to be able to block the ability of the virus to infect cells.
US biotech company Moderna, the first to report positive findings developing antibodies in humans. 8 people were trialled.
We are already seeing an immune response at the level of people who've been infected with this virus and are believed now not to be susceptible to further disease.
A second phase involving 600 Americans begins in weeks. A third phase involving 30,000 is scheduled for July, with the possibility of doses available internationally by early next year.
This is really a very first important step in the journey towards having a vaccine available for the people who need it the most.
If you are going to work out a perfect vaccine, it would take years and years.
4 major studies are underway in China, while there's scepticism in Europe. Boris Johnson writing, "I said we would throw everything we could at finding a vaccine, and I must be frank that a vaccine may not come to fruition." Sentiments echoed by Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte. But on Wall Street, the markets rejoiced, buoyed by the prospect of a vaccine. Moderna's shares rose 20%. Our markets up too. Charles Croucher, 9 News.
The nation's barley farmers are tonight paying a massive price for the diplomatic stoush between Australia and China. They're now scrambling to find new markets after Beijing imposed a crippling tariff, which could cost them millions of dollars.
Australian farmers like Brett Hosking will struggle to sell their barley.
It's devastating for all grain farmers.
Because China has slapped an 80% import tax on the grain.
That's $500 million out of the Australian economy, right at a time when the Australian economy needs all the help it can get.
Beijing has had the cereal in its sights for 18 months. Barley exports to China fell from 1.5 billion to 600 million between 2017 and 2019, after Beijing launched an investigation in late 2018 into whether the grain was subsidised.
Australian farmers are the least subsidised farmers right around the world.
Few believe this is about subsidies, but more likely retribution for Australia demanding an international inquiry into COVID-19.
I can understand why people draw those links, particularly given the unhelpful comments of the Chinese ambassador to Australia a few weeks ago.
Last night, the World Health Assembly debated a European motion for a coronavirus inquiry.
To ensure WHO members have timely access to critical data.
The Chinese president said his country would support an inquiry, but only after the pandemic ends.
All along,
We have acted with openness, transparency and responsibility.
America lashed out at China, saying it had made a mockery of its obligation to warn the world of the virus. Donald Trump also has the WHO in his sights. In a scathing letter to its Director General, he writes, "The only way forward for the World Health Organization is if it can actually demonstrate independence from China." And as Australian ministers claim credit for the inquiry,
we should be damn proud as a nation that we led the world.
The Chinese embassy issued another missive saying to claim the resolution a vindication of Australia's call is nothing but a joke. But few farmers are laughing. Chris Ullman, 9 News.
Police are investigating the suspicious death of a 7-month-old baby in the state's Hunter region. Detectives are hoping to